This is Office Hours with SIU System President Dan Mahony, a monthly podcast that explores what's happening in and around American higher education. And now your host, SIU System President Dan Mahony.
Thank you for turning into Office Hours. I'm your host, SIU System President Dan Mahony. In this episode, we explored the big questions facing students and their families. How do you pay for college? We covered the topic briefly in an earlier episode, but I thought it'd be worth a deeper discussion on its own. The decisions whether to attend college and which college to attend are among the bigger decisions that people make in their lives, and cost is one of the biggest factors in making both of those decisions. The problems for students and their families, I find, is that accurate information on the costs is often both difficult to find, and the information available is misleading. For example, while most Americans believe the cost of tuition and fees has been consistently increasing, data from the College Board actually shows these costs have declined over the last 15 years. For example, public four-year institutions, the cost of net tuition in 2025 dollars is actually down 48% since 2012. Even if you ignore inflation, it is still about 25 to 30% cheaper than it was in 2012. So the check you write is actually 25 to 30% less. This is largely because sources available to pay for college have increased. And the data shows, for example, that more than 80% of college students receive some kind of assistance in paying for college. Now, this varies across institutions, and I will say, for example, for the SIU freshmen, the percentage is over 90%. And in fact, in Illinois right now, IBHE recently put out a report that found that 44% of Illinois residents pay nothing for tuition and fees while attending a four-year institution in Illinois. That's up from 24% just in fiscal year 18. And it's actually interesting, you see this beyond and even in some of the private institutions that we think about as being extraordinarily expensive. Yale recently announced that for families with incomes under $200,000, they will go for free. This is up from what it was a few years ago in 2020. That threshold was $75,000. Harvard, MIT, Johns Hopkins all have very similar programs to that. Now, not all of us can get into Yale and Harvard. I certainly could not. So that's not necessarily an option for everybody, but for those who can, there are ways to afford it, and I think more so than people realize. So while the media often focuses on the published tuition and fee rate, the reality is only a small percentage of students actually pay that. The problem is, while most students and families don't pay the full price, determining what they will pay and how much that might vary across institutions can be incredibly challenging. This means that people must be proactive in finding information on costs and searching for the various levels of support that are available. In order to help with that, we decided to invite some guests who are really great with providing tips for how you may do that. We will be talking to people who help students navigate that process and uncover opportunities for paying for college. We're also excited to be joined by one of our outstanding students who's going to share how she's found ways to help cover the cost of school and what's worked for her along the way. So first, I'd like to welcome Andy Benoit, who recently served as the Vice Chancellor of the SIUE Division of Enrollment Management, and Elise Weller, who serves as the Director of SIUC's Financial Aid Department. And Andy, I'll start with you. What are some of the common misperceptions related to the costs of college?
Thank you, President Mahony. Really, one of the biggest perceptions and misconceptions that we see from people is that college isn't affordable or they can't afford to come to college. We try to dispel those myths every time we get a chance. One of the things that we as universities, especially what we do here throughout the SIU system, is to truly fit the cost of attendance for our students. For example, we have taken on more of a counseling role with our families and truly showing them that between what we can offer with institutional assistance, with federal assistance, with state assistance, especially if they are from Illinois or one of our border areas, say in Missouri, we have an opportunity to be able to show them that we can meet their cost of attendance with a combined variety of aid packages to include federal aid being Pell Grant if they're eligible, or student loans, the institutional scholarships that we have, along with a varying complement of state aid that is available. So the biggest misconception would be that it is not affordable to come here. Colleges and universities truly, have been fighting the value proposition for several different years because the perception is that costs keep rising. But as you pointed out in your introduction, we are an affordable choice. With an all-in total, if students choose to live on campus here, particularly at SIUE, we are looking at a student paying anywhere from $24,000 to $27,000 for the year all in, if they're looking at tuition and fees and room and board and books and supplies. So that is a pretty affordable area for the tuition and fees amount when you consider that to other institutions outside of our state. So we have an opportunity to be able to package what we can, especially for students who have need to come into the institution, but also a variety of complement of academic scholarships which are available to our students. Now, what we have also done in order to be able to address this is to be able to help people come in on the front end and start packaging their assistance when they get their admission offers so that we can beat those misconceptions that start out at the beginning.
Yeah, Lisa, anything you want to add?
The only thing that I would add, we also want to explain to our students the difference between the direct costs that they have to pay to the school and direct costs, because sometimes they still think they don't have enough money to be able to make the colleges affordable when really they do have everything covered.
Yeah, no, and I think you all hit on some of the, misconceptions as well as some of the things that are available to students from a variety of different sources. At least before even applying, how can students and families find out more about the cost of college and how to cover those expenses? I know you both talked about once they apply some of the things we try to do, but before they even apply, what would you advise?
I would advise them to go to, every college has a federal net price calculator. It's a federal regulation that we have to have a net price calculator. And the net price calculator shows the student the cost of attendance at that particular institution. And then it shows what eligible financial aid and other assistance the student might be eligible to receive. At our institution, in Carbondale, our net price calculator will show their institutional money that they're eligible to receive, the federal money that they're eligible to receive, the state money that they're eligible to receive, and also merit-based scholarship that they're eligible to receive. The net price calculator is easy to use. If a student has already completed their FAFSA, they just need to know what their student aid index is. If the student hasn't completed their FAFSA, the net price calculator will take you through and it will, ask you the questions, some of the FAFSA questions to determine what your, eligibility might be. It also, shows the total cost of attendance with your tuition fees, if you live on campus, etc. Ours also, we have different tuition rates. If you're like your child of someone that graduated from SIU Carbondale, we have a legacy tuition rate, and it will also take that into effect. Also, like any college campus, like their financial aid office website is required by federal regulation to also have all this information that explains each of the different types of programs that we participate in, and also to list the total cost of attendance and explain what each of those cost components.
Yeah, Andy, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point about the websites. I think that one of the things that all of us do with regard to the admission process and anything there, I think our materials that we share with them early on in high school and definitely throughout their senior year directs them to our websites very, very well because of the net price calculator, but also the variety of information about the scholarships and different types of aid that are going to be there. I think also, I want to point out we are very fortunate in Illinois that ISAC, the Illinois Student Assistance Corporation, does give a commission, it gives us a lot of materials. And what we do at SIUE is in all of our financial aid packaging and things that we share with prospective students when they come on tour or when they go through and get information, there's a variety of information and materials that they put out that we share directly with students that will go through the different types of aid and kind of address those things. I think it's very powerful that we share the information early on in the process so that they can start preparing, and it gives us a better way to be able to answer the questions sometimes. Because when we talk about those misconceptions, really and truly, folks typically understand, especially if they talk to people that went to college 20 or 30 years ago, and they find out that a Pell Grant 20 or 30 years ago could pay for everything. Well, some people still assume that these days. Well, $7,400 doesn't pay for everything. So let's talk if you get Max Pell. So let's talk about all the different things that we can go through. But that variety of information begins in connections with the websites, but also with the materials that the institutions are able to share, both from the state as far as the feds as well.
Yeah, and I'll pick up a couple of things that you all talked about. The net price calculator, I think, is a valuable tool that is probably underutilized by a lot of families. And I actually did that, particularly when both my kids were applying to college. I used that quite a bit. And I will say it wasn't always 100% matching what happened after they applied, but it was pretty close in most cases. And it actually allowed us, I think, in some cases, it was interesting. I remember one institution in particular. My kids were pretty similar students, but one had higher SAT scores and one had higher grades. And at one institution, that one with higher SAT scores, I think got like 18,000 more in aid than the one with the high grades did. So we eliminated that institution for that family member. But again, being able to find something out like that was helpful in the front end and kept us away from applying to places that we would not have gotten really any financial aid at all. I think the other thing that you talked about was the state support, and I will say in Illinois, and again, this varies across states, but the availability of aid has been increasing and is pretty strong. So the MAP funding, as well as AIM High, has allowed us to provide more support for students than we've been able to do in some of the other states in which I worked. And so I think that's another thing that I'm not sure people realize how much that can cover. And that's an important thing, and it's increased. Like you say, 20 years ago, that wasn't available either. So, Andy, I'll start with you on this one. What should people understand about student loans and the available options on student loans? And some of this is obviously changing.
I think that nowadays, with the proliferation of more and more people attending college, especially first-generation students, we have a lot more families that are averse to taking out student loans. So I think that's where that we've been putting a lot more effort over time to be able to talk in counseling through financial aid and admissions to be able to talk to people really about student loans and really about the borrowing that is associated with it. Student loans are an opportunity for people to get a fair percentage rate on a loan that can be government backed. Gives them an opportunity either for subsidized or unsubsidized. Obviously, the subsidized loans, they don't have to pay anything back until after they graduate. The unsubsidized, they start paying back the interest while they're in school, but really can start picking up the principal and interest after they graduate. The difference there is that there are limits, and certainly I'm sure Elise can expand on this as well. There are limits that students can take out with regard to the sub and the unsubsidized loans when they come in. There are aggregate limits that have for underclassmen as well as upperclassmen, and as far as graduate students or professional students as well, there are limits that they can take out. Then as far as the loans, the other loans that may be available, we do have PLUS loans that are available to undergraduate students so that they can reach out if their parents are eligible to receive that based on their credit history. They can get an opportunity to receive one of those loans and take out one of those loans to support the educational expenses to close any gaps that they have. Now, what we do as a university is we package every student toward that cost of attendance. What we define as the cost to attend the university through financial aid considers the room, board, books, supplies, whether or not they're on or off campus, childcare expenses if necessary, all those other things that are supporting what it takes to go to school. And then at that point, we package all the things that the students are eligible for. More often than not, we do package a loan for almost every student that we have. Now, students have an opportunity to be able to accept or decline any parts of those different types of aid that they want. Now, what we've been doing a lot is to explain about the loans. You don't have to take on $100,000 in debt, if you don't need to do that. If you can go to school without taking out any student loans, that's fine. Or if you only need to take out $1,000, that's fine. So what we try to do is package them all to their cost of attendance, but also taking into consideration that we do also package all those other types of assistance. The federal loan, the federal grant programs that we have, the state programs, as well as our institutional aid programs that we have. Loan money is something that can be a very good opportunity to close the gap for a student to be able to come into the institution. I think a lot of times when families look at it, they take a look at student loans and think of it as, oh God, I don't want to take out another mortgage on my home or anything like that. So we have to explain really and truly how the process works and able to be able to help them understand that this is a fraction of the cost that you will have for the institution, and you don't you don't necessarily have to start making the payments now in all cases, that you tend to be able to plan those things out. And again, it is a very competitive rate that the students are afforded to be able to do that as well.
Hey, Lisa, anything you want to add?
I agree with everything that Andy said. I think the most important thing that I find with some of our students is that when the whole family is there, the student doesn't understand what a loan is, that they don't understand it's something that they have to pay back. And I want to make sure always that the student understands that they're the one that is taking out the loan, and that, you know, the additional requirements that a student has to do to have a loan, that the student is the one that is completing those requirements, so they understand the importance of, you know, paying back the loan and the origination fee and the interest rates and all those things that go along with having a loan.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to end it too. Is sometimes, and we used to get that every year with my kids, that, you know, we'd had the offer of the loan, but we didn't want to take out those. You don't have to take them out if you don't need them. But again, sometimes you do, and I certainly did. So I took out loans when I was a student, and I think it was a good investment. As my financial advisor always tells me, there's good debt and bad debt, and that was bad debt to take on because it allowed me to get a degree and move forward in my life in the way I wanted to, and it was reasonable enough amount that I could pay it off. But I think understanding what you're getting into is critically important for families. Lisa, I'll stay with you for a second. Talk to me a little bit about how the Saluki commitment works.
Okay, so our Saluki commitment is part of our AIM High program, the AIM High money from the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And we use our AIM High Saluki commitment money to help students pay the difference in their tuition and fees that's not covered by their grants and scholarships. A student is eligible to receive Saluki commitment if they have a 2.75 GPA and their annual income is less than $120,480 with assets less than $50,000. This is only for our Illinois students. They have to be an Illinois resident that attended an Illinois high school. It will pay, they have to be full-time, which is 12 hours, and be on campus. It will pay for 8 consecutive, semesters, as long as they continue to stay on campus, enroll in 12 hours, and meet the satisfactory academic progress requirements. We have limited funds because it does come from ISACs. Basically, the great thing about AIM High Saluki commitment is that if you are like our neediest students that have, the lower student aid index, their tuition, their MAP grant and their Pell Grant and their scholarship will cover all of our tuition and fees. So this is like, we're trying to help the students that don't probably have as much money in MAP and Pell. To me, sometimes those are the needier students. They don't have this higher student aid index where, college might not be, is affordable for them without the help of this program.
That's a good point. I think a lot of times we forget that it's not just the students from lower incomes, but those from middle incomes that are sometimes struggling to find a way to pay for it. And this has been a program we've had to help deal with that. Andy, I know the SIUE has their commitment as well, slightly different and has some additional parts to it. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. We do have opportunities for students that live in both Illinois and in our greater St. Louis area. The SIUE commitment grant is applied to tuition and fee charges on the student's account. It's for independent freshmen that are coming into the university or transfer students with family incomes less than $113,575 and assets less than $50,000 based on what they filled out on the FAFSA. For the Illinois commitment, they must be an Illinois resident who attended an Illinois high school, and for our Gateway opportunity, they have to attend a Missouri high school in the greater St. Louis area for that as well. For these students to receive this, they have to be a full-time student enrolled in one of our baccalaureate programs, and they're administered for up to 8 semesters.
Yeah, and again, this is similar. I talked earlier about the program at Yale and what they were doing, and this is a very similar type of program that, again, makes college affordable, and it's part of the reason why I talked about that data from IBHE, where we now have 44% paying no tuition and fees among Illinois residents. Things like the Saluki commitment and SIU commitment is the reasons why they're not paying those tuition and fees anymore. Andy, what other programs reduce the cost of college if you meet certain requirements. What else do you do at SIUE beyond the SIUE commitment?
Sure. Well, obviously, we mentioned MAP earlier. That gives students an opportunity to receive, especially our needy students in the state of Illinois, to receive up to $8,400 in funding per year. So that is a significant amount of money that is off their tuition and fees that can be applied to their bill. Obviously, our aim high, we fund at approximately $2,500 a year. Again, we use the income thresholds and at least a 2.75 GPA out of high school coming out there. But here at our university, what we do on our website is we have a how to pay for college website. And at that point, we not only define what it's going to cost them for their tuition, they can break it down. We do have differential tuition for some of our different majors that we have here on campus. They can understand the cost of the various housing facilities that we have, as well as what it's going to cost for their meal plans and different things there. And then we do have a variety of areas that they can look on there for all the different scholarships that are available to the university. Now, we have obviously our full ride scholarship that we have for the institution is our Meridian Scholarship. We've been going out for the last few days to schools all over Illinois and into Missouri, presenting our full ride scholarships to our students. Those students are participants in our Honors College. We also give out to the students who are part of that process. We've given out several hundred of our Provost scholarships, which also provide full tuition waivers for students as well. We've given out throughout the state, and in our contiguous states, we've also given out to a number of students from out of state and out of country that have been eligible as well. We package our students with those scholarships, our academic scholarships. Those are competitive based. We have others that are applied directly when a student applies for admission. Our Cougar Pride scholarships, our Janetta Haley, any of our other different academic scholarships that are available are applied directly when a student applies for admission. We also have transfer scholarships that are available as well. So all those are applied directly to a student. Now, other students, either new or continuing students, depending on what their major is, we also have foundation-based scholarships that are awarded throughout the year. The other thing I will say is that we do have a variety of sources that we make available to our students, not only for scholarships available here on campus, but we connect them to sources that are available outside of our campus. Different community organizations within their areas that are connected with the institution, or we do have some national sources that we do make available for students to check out. The other thing I will say is that we work very closely with all of our high school guidance counselors that are available in the high schools, and I know Carbondale does as well, as far as being able to connect students to those community scholarships that are in their local areas. All those funding sources are in addition to anything they might get here. So we do provide opportunities not only to connect students to a variety of areas here on campus, but we do it off campus as well. So the clear picture there holistically is to connect students with the services that are provided here on campus. We answer questions, we give guidance. We don't want students to pay for any sources that they go out and have to pay to get information about financial aid and scholarships. We provide all that to them as a service, but also to be able to connect them to opportunities here at the university. But it is something where we make literally millions of dollars available to students each and every year, not only from our on-campus sources, but through connecting them to private sources as well. Because as we know, when a student is taking a look, especially for a lot of our new students, a lot of our first generation students coming in, it can be overwhelming to take a look at all the things that they need to cover and all the things that they need to consider.
Yeah, Lisa, anything you want to add?
We do the same thing with our merit-based scholarships. We award them when the student is admitted, and we also have, full ride scholarships that we went all over, Illinois, awarding at high schools in Texas and St. Louis. The one thing that I do want to add, though, is that how we have our foundation scholarships, and we award our foundation scholarships usually right after we package students to close the gap in their financial aid packages. And the financial aid office was recently, given a bunch, some of the foundation money to be able to help, to be a couple $1 million to be able to help do this. And we give it to the student for just not the first year, but for 4 years, so that they are able to fund them the whole time that they're here. We also were able to do this though because we have a scholarship portal where the student, once they apply and they're admitted, their information is automatically put in there and it's matched to the scholarships that they meet the requirements to. And then that way we can use that information to be able to award that money to help, close the gaps.
Yeah, all of this is really helpful. I think a couple of things I'll take away from your responses is that it's important for people to keep in mind there's both need and merit based. And there's ones that we automatically apply, but then there's also ones you have to apply for. So again, doing that investigation, particularly on the ones you have to apply for, so that you meet deadlines and give yourself the best chance to be successful for that is important. And I think, as Andy, you mentioned, there's also outside sources as well that you can apply for. And there are scholarships that cover you for all 4 years. There's also ones, and I was fortunate to get a couple that only covered 1 year's worth of some of the costs, not all of my costs, but some of my costs that I got while I was a student, and those came from foundation sources as well. So there's lots of different places that it may come from. I will say one of the things I think we have done well, we didn't get to earlier, but when we talk about even the commitments, we also have transfer commitments and scholarships available for transfer students, which a lot of institutions still don't do, and traditionally has been less available, I think, for most students. So students looking to transfer, there's actually more, I think, funding available than there used to be. And we also have at Carbondale, the SIU, the Saluki Step Ahead, which allows them to do 2 years at a community college and then the last 2 years with SIU Carbondale without having to move, and there's scholarships associated with that, which keeps the cost very low. So I think there's a number of different ways, depending on what works best for a particular student and their family, that they can find a way to get a degree from either of our institutions at a fairly reasonable cost. Elise, I'll go with you again. What are some of the ways you've seen students find more support for covering college, perhaps outside of the universities, and the things we just talked about?
Some students, their parents have some kind of employer tuition benefits that they utilize. They also can get scholarships military scholarships or apply to ROTC programs, local businesses, community foundations. It's just important that they know what all of their options are and that they utilize all the resources that they have. Their high schools are really good in helping them also find other scholarships, in the community too. We work a lot with high schools and students to help them find everything that they're eligible for. Another way to help, a student cover the costs, it would be in our, is maybe to be a resident assistant so that they get their, room and board paid for. That helps them to get involved too.
Now, it's a great example of an opportunity that I certainly, even when I went to college, I didn't realize was available initially, but certainly helped a number of the people that I was friends with. Andy, what would you like to add?
So there are a couple of things I'd like to add, and I'm glad Elise mentioned the RA situation there, because I want to bring up about student employment. Because I think student employment gives a lot of students an opportunity, especially the ones that are packaged through federal work study, gives an opportunity for them to not only earn money while they're going to school, can help defer some of their costs, can help pay for their pocket expenses, any of that kind of stuff. But it also gives them a connection here on campus with one of our departments or one of the organizations or what have you here on campus, or even indeed in some of our communities, giving an opportunity for them to work in a job that can complement what they're doing in their studies, not necessarily compete, something that they don't have to do for 40 hours, but does give them an opportunity to earn some money to be able to apply toward their expenses while they're going to school. I think that that's a really good alternative for a lot of our students, and it can be something that can be good in addition to and build up responsibility among our students, but also to connect them. And studies show that when students are engaged on campus, they do better, they retain more, they graduate on time. So it's an opportunity for us to be able to build that as well. The other thing that Elise mentioned was ROTC, and I think that is important. I think if they get a military scholarship, ROTC, any of those areas, any of the performance-based Our competitive participation areas do provide scholarships in a lot of ways through their federal agencies or through the state agencies. We do have a variety of military benefits that are available for students if families have served, are currently serving, or if the student has served or is currently serving. So those benefits are available either from the federal and or the state areas that are available to assist students as well. And the final thing I'll point out as far as external sources, if parents want to start saving early, there are 529 plans that they can start saving money early on when a student is young and be able to do it in a tax-deferred way that allows them to be able to save money to be able to tap into for college expenses as well.
Yeah, great idea bringing up the 529 plans because it's something you can start doing fairly early on and is something that also, and we had this too, where family members sometimes, rather than giving other gifts that we didn't need at the time, would contribute to that for our kids. Mm-hmm. And so it was able to build up their fund and cover some of those costs. And I will say it's interesting when you bring up the military option. My dad was one of 6 boys, and most of them got their college degrees with support from the military. That was how they were able to afford it and would not have been able to afford it to go otherwise. So, Andy, last question. What advice would you give to students and families who are concerned about the cost of college? And when should they start thinking about, what they should be doing to lower that cost as much as possible?
So what we always tell folks, start doing it early, especially if you want to tap into the things like the 529 plans, anything like that. Start saving early. Start talking about the cost of what an education is at an earlier level. We are starting to do outreach into schools, sometimes in middle schools now, definitely in some cases some elementary schools, getting them exposed to college, especially with more first-generation students than we've ever had before. But giving an opportunity to understand what college costs, the different funding sources that may be available and be out there. So start thinking early. The other thing I will mention is tap into the resources. The universities exist for a reason. Their financial aid offices and their admissions offices exist for a reason. We are there to serve students, answer questions, be able to talk about particular situations. Every particular person's situation is going to be unique in a lot of ways. That's what we get paid to do. We want to talk to you about the opportunities that exist for you, how we can make college realistic and affordable for each and every person. Access is something that we are critically aligned to because it's an opportunity in some cases to change generations of trajectories and families. So we work every single day to be able to talk to those students and those families about the opportunities that exist in front of them. And again, the one thing we always step in front of a room when we're talking to families or students is, how many of you in here think that college isn't affordable? And you will always see hands raised. And we will say, we are here to dispel the myth. We're here to talk about how it can be accessible and affordable to everyone. And the sooner that we get those messages out, the better. And the sooner that we can start engaging, the better. But truly understanding what is available out there and how we can connect and help is something that I would encourage folks to start doing. Really, it doesn't hurt to start when they're in elementary school to start making the plans of what to do later on.
Yeah, I think good advice there, both in starting early. And I actually had a family member call me a few years ago about their child and concerned about the college that she wanted to go to, whether they could afford it. And I was like, call them, get on the phone, call them. They may be able to do some things to help you out that you don't realize, but you have to ask. At least anything you want to add?
I would just add a couple things. I would make sure that families are having the conversation about what is, who's paying for what, what's expected of the student. And the other thing I would say that's really important is that once you get your financial aid offer and something has changed in your family's circumstance, that it's so important that you reach out to us so that we can reevaluate your situation. Because sometimes, you think that you have everything paid for, and then all of a sudden somebody loses a job, and that changes everything. And there are options, and we are able to help. But you have to reach out so that we can help you, because that's what, like Andy said, our job. We're a partnership. We're there to work with you to make sure that you understand everything and that you understand that college is affordable.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my role, sometimes people reach out directly to me when they've had situations like that, and I always refer them back to you all. And and a number of times you're able to do something to help them is always positively reinforcing for me. And I think a lot of times we've been able to save people who didn't think that they could continue moving on. I want to just say thank you to Andy and Elise for being with us today and answering all of our questions. It's been really helpful.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we're going to welcome Addison Bean. She is studying communications and is a senior at SIU Carbondale. And so we want to welcome to the podcast and talk a little bit about her story and finding ways to pay for college. So just to start us off, please tell our audience a little bit more about your background and your college journey so far, Addison.
My college journey started at Southeastern Illinois Community College. I went there on a performance scholarship. I graduated from there in 2024 with 2 associate degrees. I then transferred to SIU, where, like you said, I'm studying for a bachelor's in communication studies with a PR specialization, expecting to graduate in May. So that's a little bit of background on what I've been doing.
You've been able to find ways to cover your costs without loans. Please tell us about how you did that. What was your journey like? How did you seek out some of that funding? So start with that at least.
I would say probably my journey with funding college started when I was 15. That's when I got my first job. It was during kind of the tail end of COVID, so businesses were opening back up, but schools weren't still open. So I was able to work like 37 hours a week at a place in this really small town that I grew up in. So I started a savings account when I was 15. And I do think and I would have done that if it wasn't for my mom, because like every other kid, that was not on my mind. And I do think it's very important for students to start their own savings account with their own money that they're getting, to have that cushion. Starting that pot of money for that cushion for college really helped me. Another thing, and I think Elise mentioned this earlier, was community scholarships. My senior year of high school, I probably applied for close to like 40 different scholarship opportunities, whether they were local, through my high school, online, national. And I ended up walking away with about $5,000 just from the scholarships that I did apply for. I think that you get with scholarships, you get what you put in. The more that you apply for, the more you are more likely to get back. So that starting that pot of money with working since I was 15, like constantly having a job, and then also having those scholarship opportunities really assisted in getting that cushion for me. My community college also, I am a big supporter of community college. I love the idea of going because it is an affordable track for some people, and I think I would have floundered if I would have gone straight to a 4-year university. And the transition process from my community college to SIU in particular was really easy, very, very helpful from the staff and the admissions. So I never want to put down community college. I think that it can be a great option. Also, I think that you should take any opportunity given to you. The opportunity I was given through my community college was to attend on a full ride performance scholarship. It came with a lot of criteria. I had to take specific classes. I had to be a part of specific activities, and it was very, very time consuming. But I do believe that you can do anything for a short season of your life if it leads you to your ultimate goal. So I'm very thankful that I did take that opportunity, because I was able to graduate with 2 associates without having to go into any debt or having to pay anything out of pocket, because it was a full ride performance scholarship. I also am thankful that I qualify for federal aid. One thing I would always suggest is filling out your FAFSA as early as possible, because a lot of the federal aid, it runs out. So you want to get your name in the pool as soon as you possibly can. So that's a little bit, just a lot of working and saving up. I think it's very important especially when you get to that high school age, even younger, to start learning a little bit about financial literacy, what it's like to budget, what it's like to be actually saving money, and then also investing that money into other places so you can earn some back. I think it's really important to teach that to our youth so that they can go into their college experience with that mindset.
Yeah, and lots of good things. I'll pick up on a few things. One is the concept of applying for a lot. Like I always remember my father's advice to me on almost everything is, what's the worst that can happen? And when you're applying for scholarships, the worst that happens is they say no. But the best thing but that's the same thing that's going to happen if you don't apply. So if you apply a lot and not knowing which ones you'll get and which ones you won't, you don't know that going into it. And actually, it's funny. When I was in undergrad, I applied for one of those scholarships at the end of my junior year for my senior year. And I think I got it in part because I don't know if anybody else applied. It was just one of those that no one else, I think, knew was available. So I just kind of luckily found it and did that. But the other story I'll share that goes back much further is my mom, when she was looking to go to college in 1958, took the same strategy as you. She applied for like 40 scholarships and got none of them. But there was a scholarship committee that was made up of all the people who were part of the other scholarship selection things. And she got a full ride scholarship from them because they were all familiar with her because they had seen her application and understood her. She was from a single mom home and they knew she needed the support. And so she ended up getting the big one and didn't get all of the small ones. So you just never know how it's going to turn out. So I think that's really great advice. I think the working and making sure you're saving some of your money towards college, certainly that was something I did. And I think a lot of people are not necessarily thinking about how I might be able to do that. And not that it necessarily even helps with the tuition and fees, with some of which you had covered, but it helps. There's still living expenses. And that's a part of life that for our college students has gone up because it's gone up for all of us. The cost of feeding yourself, the cost of rent, all of those things is going up. I mean, I think the point about community college is a great one as well. I talked earlier about the Sloki Step Ahead as an opportunity for students to do 2 years with a community college and then 2 years at SIU Carbondale. And for a lot of students, that's the right pathway. And I know lots of people who have gone that. My wife actually started in a community college before she went to a 4-year institution. It's a good pathway for a lot of people. And fill out the FAFSA and fill it out early. Yeah, that's probably one of the best pieces of advice for any student. And again, I think we hit on a lot of this, but is there any other advice you give to students who are starting to plan for college and are concerned about costs? What would you tell them to start thinking about doing now?
The first thing I think I would suggest is to just take a breath. It's very overwhelming, and financial aid is a very niche subject that there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of information out there. It's overwhelming. It's a lot to understand, but it is possible to understand it. And so I just recommend taking a breath. And then also another thing I recommend is research. Utilize those cost calculators. Do your math, sit down and think, okay, I want to go to this university. How can I get from point A to point B with the funds that I currently have? What do they have available for me? And then cost compare it with another place. I think it's important to not limit yourself onto one university in particular. And to kind of play out your options and just see what you can get. I also think it's very important to ask questions. Like it was mentioned in the earlier section, the whole point of a university is to serve its students. The people in the financial aid office, they want to help students figure out how to meet that gap with their cost of attendance. So make an appointment, go in person, talk to these people who have a really great, vast knowledge in this field to help assist you. I think it's very, very important to ask for help when needed. And as someone who works in a financial aid office as a student worker, there are no stupid questions. Absolutely no stupid questions. Anything that comes to your mind, you need to ask it. So yeah, I would say take a breath, do your research, and then also ask for help when needed. Yeah,
and a lot of good advice, and I think your point too about not getting stuck on one institution. I've seen students sometimes do that to their own detriment because, again, you may find it's a better situation, I don't know how many people I've talked to who ended up going to places that was never near the top of their list. But as I started to explore it for a variety of reasons, perhaps including cost, but even sometimes others, they went someplace else. Actually, the last thing I want to ask you, I always ask the students, like, you're graduating soon. What's next for Addison?
So I've actually applied to grad school at SIU Carbondale, so I'm hoping to hear back soon from them. If not, I'm looking for an entry-level job in higher education. I love higher education, so I'm hoping to stick around for a bit, get my feet on the ground. So
that's great, and it's actually interesting. We talked earlier about the great opportunity to work at the institution while you're going there, and how that actually can get you good experience, and often is a way that we end up finding people who are our next employees. Because they like working in higher ed and they end up staying with us. So, well, thank you so much, Addison. I appreciate you sharing your advice and your experience on your college journey with our audience.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, again, I want to say thank you to all of our guests for being with us today. This is an important conversation. We hope it helps students and families feel more confident about the path to college and the many options that are available to help pay for it. And again, can't say this enough, encourage you to reach out, explore those opportunities, ask questions. Happy to have you reach out to us at the universities, and we will help you as much as we possibly can. As we wrap up this episode, I want to acknowledge our production team on Office Hours. SIU Edwardsville graduate student Salman Amandi and Jason Church at WSIE Radio on the SIUE campus for their guidance. And last but not least, we're thankful to all of you listeners for spending part of your day with us today. So thank you so much.
Be sure to join us next time on Office Hours for further conversation with the people who work in and study higher education. Special thanks to Kara Baldus Merriman and Daniel Merriman for the use of their composition Writer's Block as the Office Hours theme song. And thank you for listening to Office Hours with SIU System President Dan Mahony.